Welcome to your personalized deep dive. We're going to be digging into the future of the software industry, and specifically what it means for you. And to help us make sense of it all, we've got expert speaker here with us.
Glad to be here. It's going to be exciting to dive into these sources you've gathered.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. One of the things that really jumps out right off the bat is the impact of AI. And I'm not just talking about AI products, but AI actually changing how software is built.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really interesting for you. I see you're currently a senior software engineer specializing in back-end systems, right?
That's right.
Well, what's fascinating is that your sources suggest AI-powered tools are going to become really common for things like automating code generation and testing. So less of the tedious stuff.
So more time for creative problem solving and big picture thinking, which I guess has to impact the role of a senior engineer.
It does. One of your sources even went as far as saying that leadership in this new world will be less about being able to write the code yourself and more about architecting systems that leverage AI effectively.
Leverage AI, or get left behind. That's catchy. But AI isn't the only thing shaking things up. You highlighted a number of articles about cloud computing and how that's still evolving rapidly.
Cloud migration, it's like that never-ending road trip, right? You think you're almost there, but then it turns out you've got miles to go. And your sources indicate that this is only going to intensify the demand for cloud expertise, particularly in hybrid environments.
Which is interesting for you, right? Because your company is moving towards that hybrid cloud setup, aren't they?
Exactly. And it's one thing to know about cloud platforms, but it's another to manage that kind of transition on a company-wide scale.
That's a whole other ballgame.
Right. And that's what some of your sources were highlighting. Companies are looking for people who not only have the technical cloud skills, but also the project management and communication skills to actually lead those transitions effectively.
So it's not just about being a technical expert. It's about being a leader who can bridge the gap between tech and business. Now, speaking of looking ahead, you even flagged a few pieces on quantum computing, which, even for 2025, feels pretty far out.
It is early days, but I think it's smart to have it on your radar. I mean, one article even mentioned how some financial institutions are already experimenting with quantum algorithms for things like risk modeling.
So maybe not something you need to be coding for tomorrow, but having a basic understanding could be valuable. It's like, you're not a quantum physicist, but you at least know what a qubit is.
Exactly. And in a competitive job market, that kind of awareness can set you apart.
So they've got AI changing how we build software, the cloud migration marathon still underway, and quantum computing on the horizon.
And we're just getting started. I think the key takeaway here is that the pace of change in the software industry is only accelerating, which means the skills that got you to where you are today, well, they might not be enough to get you where you want to go tomorrow.
Which brings us to the big question. How can IT professionals like you stay ahead of the curve? How do you future-proof a career in such a dynamic, fast-changing field? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you future-proof yourself in a field where the landscape is constantly shifting?
It's like trying to hit a moving target, right? But the interesting thing is, your sources don't necessarily recommend chasing after every new trend or shiny new framework.
So it's not all about jumping on the latest bandwagon.
Not exactly. Several of your sources actually emphasize the importance of building a really strong foundation in the fundamentals.
Okay, so back to basics. Like, what kind of fundamentals are we talking about here?
Well, you've got a strong background in back-end systems, right?
Right.
So think about the core principles there. Things like distributed systems, data structures, algorithm design. Your sources suggest those fundamentals remain relevant even as AI changes how we approach building those systems.
It's like the tools might change, but the underlying problems, the challenges you're solving, they're often the same.
Exactly. And many of your sources emphasize that employers are looking for that deep understanding. You know, it's not enough to just know how to use a tool. You need to understand how it works, its limitations.
When to use one tool over another.
Exactly.
Which brings us to this whole world of certifications. I mean, you highlighted several articles about how valuable they can be. Is it really worth getting certified?
Well, I think a lot of your sources see certifications as a strong signal to potential employers.
It's like a stamp of approval. It says, hey, this person's invested in developing these specific skills.
Right. And it's not just about general knowledge either. I noticed you were thinking about maybe moving into more of a cloud architecture role.
Yeah, I've been toying with that idea.
Well, your sources specifically mention the AWS Certified Solutions Architect certification as being highly sought after for those kinds of roles.
So it's like, yeah, general knowledge is good, But having that specialized certification can give you an edge in a specific area.
But it's not all about formal credentials, is it? I mean, you also bookmark some articles about the rise of low-code platforms.
Yeah, low code is fascinating. It's almost like this democratization of technology, right? Some of your sources were a little bit unsure about how drastically it's going to change the industry.
Right, there are definitely mixed opinions on that.
But they did seem to agree that even having a little bit of familiarity with low-code platforms could be valuable.
Especially given my interest in potentially leading teams that work between the tech side and the business side.
Exactly. Imagine being able to rapidly prototype a solution using a low-code platform.
And get buy-in much faster from stakeholders who might not be as technical.
Exactly. And I think that speaks to a bigger theme here, which is adaptability. It's not just about what you know today, but how quickly you can adapt and learn new things. The only constant is change, right? Speaking of constants, you highlighted a bunch of reports on cybersecurity. It feels like no matter what else is happening in tech, cybersecurity is always going to be there.
Oh, absolutely. And becoming even more important, right? As software becomes even more integrated into our lives. You know, one of the things that really jumped out from your sources is this idea that security can't just be an afterthought anymore.
So that needs to be baked in from the beginning.
Well, exactly. It's got to be front and center. And that actually reminded me of something you had highlighted. How do you handle cybersecurity when you're not a dedicated security professional?
Yeah, it's not like I have security engineer on my business card.
Right. But one of your sources, that SANS Institute report, it talks about the need for security champions on development teams. These are the folks who might not be security specialists themselves.
But they're the ones who are proactive about integrating security best practices.
Exactly. It's about shifting the mindset from just writing code that works to writing code that's secure by design.
Okay, so we've covered the hard skills, the technical side of things. But what about those softer skills? Things like communication, problem solving, teamwork, all that human stuff. Is that still important when everyone's talking about AI and automation taking over the world? It does feel like those soft skills are always coming up. Makes you wonder if it's just one of those things people say to sound good.
I get it. It's easy to think, okay, but can I ship good code or not? But honestly, they're becoming super important, especially in a field like yours, because as AI starts to handle more of the routine stuff, right? What really sets humans apart are those uniquely human skills.
Yeah. Thinking critically, communicating clearly.
Yeah.
Being able to actually work with other humans without,
Exactly. And it's not just some vague idea. I can see how it applies directly to your situation. Think about that move towards cloud architecture you were talking about.
Right.
Your sources mention how complex those hybrid cloud environments are becoming. But designing the system is only half the battle, right?
Right, because then you've got to bring everyone along with you.
Exactly. Explaining what you're doing to stakeholders who might not have the same technical background, managing those expectations, navigating the inevitable conflicts that come up. Suddenly, those soft skills aren't so soft anymore.
It's like being a therapist for technology. You need people skills and tech skills.
And you know what else I noticed in your notes? This whole idea of mentorship and knowledge sharing really stood out to you.
It did. I mean, I've personally learned so much from more experienced people in the field. Are companies really looking for that?
Oh, absolutely. Several of your sources talked about how important it is for organizations to build strong learning cultures. They want people who are hungry to learn and willing to share what they know.
It lifts everybody up.
Exactly. So we've talked about AI, cloud computing, the importance of those soft skills, staying adaptable, continuous learning. It's a lot. What's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from all of this? Be proactive. You really are the architect of your own career. Don't wait for opportunities. Go out and create them. This industry changes fast, but it rewards those who are curious, adaptable, and always pushing themselves to learn.
Be the architect of your own career. I love that. Well, we've only just scratched the surface here, but hopefully this gives you a better sense of where things are headed, and maybe more importantly, how you can thrive in this exciting, constantly evolving world of software. Just one last thought before we wrap up. What's one small step, one action you can take this week to start building that future you want? Think about it. And that's it for this deep dive. Until next time.